Hello, people. This week, I decided to go spy novel. Specifically, it's not this whole book. This is one of those 3-in-1 situations. So, I think I already read this one. Very good. And now I read this one. The Honorable, it's not going to be backwards for y'all. The Honorable Schoolboy. So, think, I don't know, a third of this book, right? It's a fair amount, a third. Not that long, not super short. By, what is it? John Le Carre. I think I said that right. I have no idea. This book is fantastic. Okay. Rating. 4 out of 5. I think it's a solid 4 out of 5. I don't think you can recommend it to casuals. Readers will enjoy it. And if you're not feeling the spy genre, if you're doing fantasy or something to this effect, just wait. Give it a second, and when you have a window, pop it in there, and I think you'll be happy for the change of pace. We always need that every so often. But it's wonderful writing. So there's something to chew on. The problem is, for casuals, for rank amateurs, as we call them, non-readers, you know the type, is that it is slow, right? So a normal person, a casual, will think spy, Jason Bourne, James Bond, action, explosions, this kind of thing. This isn't that. This is more, it leans more towards the realistic. It's going to be very, very slow. So, set your mind to that, and I think you'll come at it a lot better. Now, I did say it's 3 books, right? I think there's a long series of these. I only have the 3. I want them all now, to be honest. I got them sort of at a secondhand bookstore. That's why it's damaged up here. I didn't damage that. Came like that. I got it at a secondhand bookstore. He's a fairly older writer. So he was popular back in the day. I hadn't heard much about him since. But there's like 9 of these books about George Smiley, right? Your head spy, so to speak. And I want them all. Do you need to have read any of the others? No, you don't. You actually don't. This book picks up very quickly, catches you up if that's what you need. And it has great momentum. Surprisingly great momentum. And it took me a while. There were spots I was like, do I even know what the crap's happening? But not in a jumbled way, in a speed way. It was, you set your mind thinking a pace of a book is one way, and then it suddenly turns something else, and you're thrown for a little bit. That's what happened. Here's how he does it. And this is the genius of this book, actually. Perspective. So there's one point where, and we just cut, right? So there might be a jump in a paragraph, right? Let me see if I can find one. See, there might be just, see this extra spacing, right? There's not much there, right? But this sort of jump right here might be all he needs to go from one character to another, even maybe within the same action, right? So we'll start with a lady going up a hill. It's the Devil Hill or something like this. What you get the sense of is, here's a sort of common person. She's a shop owner, and she's going up a local hill they call Devil Hill. It's hot. She's tired of walking up this hill. But she got a letter, and the guy she sent up to hell, who she thought was just a weirdo, turns out to be maybe royalty, maybe rich, and she's instantly going to treat him different. right? So, and you're like, you're just that obvious? Well, it's an inner monologue. It's in her head. People, of course, wouldn't say it. They act it in some spots. Very obvious about treating people certain ways. But you're getting that in your head, in her head, and she's trying to piece together him since he got there. And in that way, you're getting his backstory. How he came to the place, how he acts, how he looks. He carries a typewriter, on and on and on, right? He's working on a novel. We go from her, we never cut to her again. She's out of the story completely. Then we cut to him, and he's acting a different way, right? Because it's now his inner monologue. And he's thinking through what he has to do. Turns out he's a spy. Pretends to be a journalist. Right? And you keep getting bounced around. And he doesn't just bounce for the sake of it, and he also doesn't lose track. So, the lady walking up the hill, one, she never comes back into the story. Two, in reading her, right, as you're reading, she doesn't have any knowledge she shouldn't have, right? So she never finds out he's a spy. These other people never find out, even within the spy bracket. Our Jerry, he's the guy, is a field man. He never finds out fully what the big plan is from the big kahuna. Our George Smiley, he knows the whole picture, right? We keep it locked like that. And even within all of this, there's an overall narrator we get the sense of, which I don't think it's ever really identified. Not fully. So an overall narrator who we get the sense of, they're telling us the history of these British spies much later after the fact. So he might know more facts. Then we cut to individuals. Then we'll cut to individuals within that. And then maybe we cut back to him, where we'll throw in and that's the last time he ever spoke to him. These kind of historical breadth facts right in the middle. It keeps it very fast-paced, extremely fast. Also, and what it does, here's the fun part. When you get these type of stories, right? Not, there's a nuke in New York City somewhere and we have to, cut the green wire. There's not that moment per se. But the problem they're dealing with is their nuke, if that makes sense. It's a major problem to them in this moment in time. But how does the author get across to you the nuance when this person just sits behind a desk the whole time, right? And this person runs from this place to that place, but has no other connection to the outside problem? You see? How do I give you the sense of the scale of the world? That's how he does it, by switching up these individual characters. And we get the story exactly from their perspective. Then by the end, you've eaten this whole apple and you understand this whole large problem. It's very, very fun. So, again, coming off the Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy book in the trilogy. Not book one of George Smiley. Again, I'm going to go back. I'm going to find that mess. That book was about uncovering a mole in the British service. Book two picks up right almost after that. What we have is a service, they call it the circus, in absolute shambles. Obviously, if the CIA, if your French intelligence and, Mossad or whatever got wind that you had a mole, I can't trust anything, right? It's like a restaurant with a bad rating. All the food has rat poop in it, basically. So there's no point in me even sending you anything. Well, without any kind of interplay, you're starting to die on the vine. Add to it your own government, right? They're looking at you like, maybe we cut the budget on this. Maybe we don't need a secret service like that. Maybe we'll just lean on the Americans, etc., etc. You have a potential of the entire British Secret Service vanishing, right? So that's the mess George Smiley picks up. All caused by a Russian named Carla. We get a great visual of him printing up like, you get a small picture and you blow it up where it shouldn't be, and it's all grainy. A big print like that up over his desk, and he just sort of like daydreams about that's his goal, to take out Carla. So what Carla did is he turned someone inside the British Secret Service and had turned them for, 10, 15 years. Massive problem. They figured that out. They got rid of him. That's the other book. Fun book. What George is doing, and this is the fun part, is the thing cuts both ways all the time in the spycraft that you get out of this book. If you tell me a lie, then I get some truth out of that lie. Meaning, it's like, if you lied about being 6 feet tall, that is not a truth. Once I find out that's not a truth, then the lie is starting to tell me something about you. Why did you lie about that? What is it doing for you? Some inner psychology, some inner motivations, etc., etc., etc. That's what they do. So it's a dangerous game. So the moment they figure that out, now from the thing that's in shambles, right? Because you had to cut a lot of people loose. Anyone that was too promoted by this person can't be trusted. So you lose a lot of your spy people. And it's George, and he has the longest history, so he goes way back. He finds an old lady named Connie, who's like a Russian genius. Other people, right? And he's drawing them back to him to now, we need to back channel everything Hayden, the mole, not just did, but what did he cover up? What did he try and get rid of? What did he try and hide? Most of what he did, he destroyed. So there's no going back to there. Some of the eyewitnesses he killed, so you can't question them. But they're looking for something in the realm of an unusual energy from Bill Hayden, right? So if you're sitting all of a sudden, you're like, oh, no, don't go in that room. I already checked it, it's fine. They're looking for one of these kind of things, right? What mission would he have made a call? This kind of thing, right? And there are layers. So you have like archives, you have the mothers, they call them, maybe who work the switchboards. You have various levels that he would have to work into, which he wouldn't have access to all of them. He couldn't go into all of them. It'd look weird. So he doesn't. But he does what he can. And in the midst, right? In the midst of circling, they end up getting some kind of a clue, of some kind of trickle of money into China. And you're like, well, how'd you get this clue? A lot of it's from this Connie lady. This is another fun part. You have these, and it's from inside out, right? So it's like a basketball player. I think one of them said this one time, where he's like, we're all kind of crazy. To work as hard as an NBA player works, they're sort of out of their mind. And when they're all together, they're like in a group of crazies. And when they're outside, they put on like a mask of, I'm a normal person, right? This sort of sense, but in the spy trade. So Connie outside of this office is just a harmless old lady. Inside the office, so she lets the mask fall, and she's like a weird Russian savant. She understands the culture. She understands the dynamics. She can read between the lines extremely efficiently. And sometimes that's all you have. That's all George has, is you have to lean on this expertise. She can't know for sure. She's not there. There's no hardened photograph. There's no paperwork that says he'll act this way. But she, looking at all the information that they ever have gleaned in Russia, is able to sort of forecast what should or shouldn't, what might or might not. And off that forecast, George will make a move, because that's all he has to go on. So she's the one who they find this sort of mission Hayden had tried to cover up. And in that mission, there was something where a fieldman had followed some money trail of some Russian spies, and it ended in this bank in China, in Hong Kong specifically. And that's their little hook. It's just a faint phantom hook, but Connie can take it and run with it. And that's what they do. And so your story goes from London, from George, from trying to figure this out, to focused real quickly. There might have been other things Bill Hayden left. There might not have been. That's not the point. The point is, this is the one we have to grab. We have to get something out of this to get back on a footing that sees us eye to eye with CIA, with our government, and then we can continue to function. Because the communists and Carla are not stopping. That's the threat. That's the burden. And that leads us right into Hong Kong, which is, okay, Hong Kong was a city owned by Britain for like 199 years. They gave it back the other day. It's a particular kind of zone, even in China, right? And of course, in that time, Cold War era, China's big into communism. There's that whole interaction. But Britain's the foothold they have. That's owned by them. The Americans can't deal with it. And there's something going on there, this money trail. And they send a big spy, a fieldman, into China to start. They need like photographs. They need him to deal with banks, to stir the pot, this kind of thing. I feel like, now, I have a few books on China, but I haven't done super big research into it. I do know, I think there was, I remember before COVID, there was like a free Hong Kong kind of movement. I don't know if you remember this. And I got some wind of sort of the cultural differences between China mainland and Hong Kong, the city. I mean, it's a huge city. Like New York, it has a heartbeat of its own, culture of its own. It had weird rules for a long while where, and there was a big argument where China was like, we'll respect your rules as a sovereign governed city, but you have to allow us this sort of access. And of course, they were trying not to respect those rules, and that's why the big protests were happening. I haven't heard of them since COVID, right? So they must have locked the crap down. It is a communist country. What are you going to do? But I got this sense of these big cultural differences between your mainland China and even mainland, from like mainland to rural, right? These zones, and Hong Kong itself. So when I start reading this, when you get into the China section of this book, he does a fairly, now again, from a character perspective, from a spy's perspective, a fairly deep dive into the issues of China, of trying to deal in China as what they call a round eye, of the levels of suspicion, of the levels of activity, of how hard it is to go unnoticed or unnoticed, etc., how dangerous it can be. You get a very deep dive into that. It's very fun. Now, I have some other books on China, and I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that my boy here is fairly accurate in his essence of Hong Kong, if you know what I mean. So in that sense, you do start to feel like between the information and the constant shifting of the perspective, you do start to feel the spy life, where you're trying to see around words that are spoken. You're trying to, see over obstacles. You're trying to grab the bigger picture in this truncated way. You can take a little knowledge and amplify it in your brain. You start to feel like a spy. I'm not going to lie. I think I went to the movies and I felt real spy-like because I was reading this book. It's very fun. So it's the Honorable Schoolboy because our boy Jerry Westerby, he's a fieldman. You get some sense as to the spy training. They call it Surratt, I think, where his training, he brings up to mind his own training and how he's supposed to act. And by the end, he's not acting appropriate. He gets dead. Very sad. It's called the Honorable Schoolboy because he, in the course of dealing with these Chinese and leaning on who he needs to lean on, he meets Lizzie. Lizzie Worthington, I believe. British. And, okay, there's a few ladies in here. There's one that's half Chinese, half American. There's Lizzie Worthington, who's British. You get a sense of how spies deal with assets, right? So the one who's half Chinese, the spy that gets a hold of her, understands that culturally she's unbalanced. And in her mind, with a little prodding, they would say, you can get her to really lean on her British patriotism, right? Like as a self-identifier, right? So that you might be poor in China and looked down on, but all that turns into some good because it's a negative you take for being this good British servant of the crown kind of thing, right? Where it becomes part of your self-perception, your self-worth. And that these spies will use that. He really leans on this girl to get information out of this bank. And that when the crap hit the fan and he would, the Craw, his name is, a Chinese expert. When he was on the outs, because Bill Hayden's trying to, nullify him to draw attention away from what he's doing, he just works the agents. He has these various setups, but nothing's coming back to him. But he just works for years on his own, keeping the fires alive so that when the thing lights back up, he can actually go draw from real information from them. But for years, he hasn't been getting anything useful out of them, but he can't let them know, right? Actually leading this poor soul along. But he's a spy, right? So he is trained not to care or not to care so much or not to let it get him down. But you feel it. You feel that bad for this person. Same with your Lizzie Worthington, right? So she has these conflicts in her mind. Her dad has grandiose thoughts, and it's led her into a kind of spy's life. And it's wearing her out. At least from Jerry, our boy Jerry's perspective. He's a fieldman. And every so often he has a bit of hero in him. And she's very beautiful, so he gets the hero in him for her. That's why it's called the Honorable Schoolboy. In the end, he sort of like falls for her. Mind you, he's been married like 3 times, so he's probably done it before. But this time it happened on mission, right? He kind of falls for her. And so from his perspective, you get a good sense of her downtroddenness. But that, I can't say is the actual truth. She might take it just fine. She might be right in her element and just plays that. You know what I mean? She could go on in the other books to do a lot more. She might disappear from the story. I'm not sure. That's what's fun. The perspective lets these emotions weigh on you much different. So by the end, again, he fell in love with her. So he's trying to blow the mission up to save her in his mind. And it gets him shot. The good guys shoot one of their own. Right on mission. I mean, it's just what happened. Now, from there, when they go back to the circus, it's just written down as, killed in the line of duty honorably. And it's because they understand their line of work. You get, in some spots, you do get what do we want to say? Like a common office feel. Even though they're spies and they could kill each other and, they're fighting the Cold War. That between the groups of them, there's a camaraderie. So when Jerry dies, they all feel bad about it. They might understand what happened, like they know it, to remember the story, but they don't speak about it in that sense because it'd be a shame to him. Because they understand the strain that he was under, and that sometimes you crack in the field, and he just chose wrong that day. And that choice is as wrong as, going left instead of right and taking the bullet from the enemy. It's the same. He wouldn't have been out there had he not been fighting for the cause. This kind of thing, right? You get that sense from him. Very fun. Now, your boy George, by the end, doesn't get Carla. This is a sort of a shock to me. What it ends up being is a big link of an opium trade they're trying to reintroduce into China mainland as a way to get the communist Russians in and have a grip. So through Asian intermediaries, they're trying to get a foothold into China as communist Russians through British Hong Kong to make the British look bad and to operate in this way, and et cetera, et cetera. And so when they grab the brother of our main Chinese enemy, they have a source of knowledge that they can pump for information about Russia, inner workings, et cetera, et cetera. They have just a golden goose for a while. Now, George sets everything up, and the Americans and another guy, I forget his name, Sam Collins, I believe. Yes, I believe it's Sam Collins. They sweep in and take the asset to Virginia, and it's a big American asset. And of course, the politics behind the scenes are, they're very happy. They have this foothold. They have this advancement in the Cold War. They can sell this to their higher-ups. On the British side, they're friends now with the British again, which is good for the British. The British higher-ups are happy about this, but the higher-ups now want to lean more on the youth and the energy and the technology. The same old, same old. The world's changed, you're too old, but they don't want to say that. And our boy Smiley, politely takes a step back and lets the rope get taken from him, so to speak. Now, on one hand, you get the sense he's doing it to save the circus, to save the British Secret Service, which is something he would do. But on the other hand, real sneaky undertones, you get a sense, because he is like masterclass spy, that these chips are falling the way he wanted, and he might not be as out of the game as you think, which is what I'm hoping on account of I got another book over here, right? They play the long con, triple, double crosses. It's very fun. Just to, in your mind, imagine how he's going to finagle his way in. I know he still wants to get Carla. So how that's going to happen, I don't know. But that's the sense you get in the end, where you get the sense that George is just settled back as to an old British gentleman, and he's out of the game completely, and he's letting the young guns take over. And they have now, he's patched the ship so that they can now add to it as they need and move it forward into the new age, etc., etc. Okay, I think that's it. Highly recommend this book. Highly recommend you read your John LeClaire books. He's a tremendous writer. Ad time? Do we do ads? Yes, we do. These are my books. Are my books as good as John LeClaire's books? Maybe not. Maybe not. But mine are cheaper, right? I'm going to pay $14 for his books. Or at least $10. So, maybe mine's more value. Now, go ahead. You might find these at secondhand stores. You could still buy them new off Kindle, Amazon, etc., etc. Grab you one. They are actually a joy. I have a few more. I'm going to look for even more, to be honest. While you're at it, grab my books. And then I can afford to buy more books or other things. Probably books, let's be honest. Okay, people. This has been fun. I will see you lovely lot next week.